you know, how can you miss that when you go out to the toilet in the middle of the night and you look up and the flames from the crematorium reach up to heaven? For people to know that is important.
I first met Helen Handler when I was teaching at Red Mountain High School in Mesa, Arizona. I had been teaching there for about 25 years. I would only see Helen about once every semester, but I will tell you that the first time I met her, I felt something so strong. I just felt like we were going to be friends.
Well, my understanding of Helen's early life, which I think is somewhat universally true from my impression, was that it was a happy time. It was a good time. She had a good family. She was cared for. She was a lovely little girl. And then things changed, and it changed pretty fast.
I was actually born in the same house my mother was born in, my grandparents' home. And when she was born there, it was the Austrian-Hungarian monarchy. When I was born there, it was Czechoslovakia. By the time I went to school, it was Hungary. It was a regular, normal city. All at once, everyone had to wear a star, a yellow star that said that they are Jews.
I retired from teaching high school after 30 years, and I probably never would have seen Helen again. I was looking forward to a life of leisure, and about a few months into my retirement, one of my colleagues at Red Mountain, who had taken over that class, asked me if I would now bring Helen out to visit her class and speak. So I did. And it was on the way to Red Mountain that first time when I'm telling Helen about retirement. And she turned to me as I'm on the freeway and she said, "You should write my story."
Someone walked in and said that this is not your home anymore, this is not your city anymore, this is not your country anymore. Pack up what everyone can take within a small suitcase, and you have to move to something what's called ghetto, where in a few blocks there are only Jews living.
To my knowledge, Helen's experience, as is true for many survivors in Europe, well, even those that didn't survive, is both typical and unique at the same time. My experience with my parents and survivors is every story is, I'm getting goosebumps just summarizing, is amazingly specific. And it's almost to dishonor them to generalize. But there is a pattern that is somewhat common. And it has, and Helen was captured in that pattern, which has to do with segregation, in other words, ghettoization, moving people apart from the regular national population, wherever they happen to be, Czech or Pole or Hungarian or whatever.
And then one day we had to move even from there in a brick factory. And we were walking towards that brick factory in the middle of the street, what only people who broke the law used to walk.
After thinking about it for a couple of weeks, I decided that I would do my very best to, at the very least, record an oral history of her story. I had enormous misgivings going into this project. As I said, I didn't know if I could emotionally handle it. I didn't know how I could bear visiting the subject of the Holocaust on a weekly basis, sitting in the intimate confines of this tiny condominium and listening to the horrors of her story.
All at once, a train stopped that used to carry merchandise, and families were pushed in that train. The doors closed on us and never opened for 4 days and 4 nights. I was looking in the grown-up's face. I wanted to see some hope, some security. Well, it wasn't there.
I had the general misgivings of any writer. Can I do this? Am I good enough? Can I put this all together? Can I make something that Helen will be proud of? I am cemented to my laptop. As long as I have that, that's my writing place, so wherever that is. So I would write not so much at my fancy desk. I would write on the sofa, in my spare room. I would write at Starbucks. I would write at the library. When I visited my son in Austin, I took my laptop and I would write there. That is more my process, is just grabbing hours when I can.
And after 4 days and 4 nights, the train stopped. All we could see for miles and miles is barbed wire. Men and women were separated. So now I lost my 2 brothers, and now I lost my grandfather. Up, that was like a higher place, stood a tall, elegant SS officer, who later in life I knew that that's Dr. Mengele. And as 5 and 5 came in front of him, he pulled out one of each 5. In our 5s, I was pulled out. I found myself alone in Auschwitz. I was 15 years old.
Helen was separated from her family the entire time that she was imprisoned at Auschwitz. And it was her belief that her family was alive still that sustained her through the horrifying experience and the brutality that she endured throughout her time at Auschwitz. Helen was able to survive 3 death marches as the Nazis attempted to relocate their prisoners. It was not until after she was liberated that Helen found out that her entire family had perished.
So this woman who had survived the most horrific of atrocities in human history found a way to carve out a life for herself and her son, become a fiercely independent small businesswoman, be successful, become the toast of Toastmasters, and go on to share her story. I think it's those elements to her that have inspired me the most. I attribute our publishing to divine intervention. I truly do, because it happened so quickly.
The aspect that is shared in A Risk of Sorrow that I use in terms of teaching government goes to exemplify to my students what the result of apathy can be, and that it is not up to someone else to speak up for injustice. It is not left to someone else to stand up against oppression and discrimination, that it is up to each individual to not only find their voice, but to act, to eradicate those unfairnesses that humans inflict on one another.
The reason that this book will prove to be an important piece in the history of the Holocaust is that it's a different kind of book. It's a relationship between two people, a Jew and a non-Jew, Jew and a Catholic, who discover the common themes of their lives and reduce it down to one book that many readers are going to enjoy reading.
Aside from her story, I learned about myself. I learned about perseverance. I look at life a bit differently now when I hear what she went through. There is no room in my brain for measly, small little petty grievances or inconveniences in life, and that's the truth. There are times when, oh, I don't want to do this, or this is uncomfortable, and then I think of Helen and I realize, oh, I can do this. After 5 years with this wonderful woman, we had gone from not knowing each other, and the only thing we knew was that we were from completely different backgrounds. We had nothing in common, we thought, and yet over the course of these conversations, we discover how much we have in common, how much all of us in the human race have in common, and it led to a very, very close friendship.